Okay, so here is the triangle that you have just been working with, and we accidentally got our video shut off too here, so we're just starting up again. We were given that R, which is a leg, is equal to 6. So S has to be 6. Now we're not asked for S, we're just asking for T. So in order to get from the leg to the hypotenuse, we are multiplying by the square root of 2. So the answer to number 1 should be 6 times the square root of 2. In number 2, we are given different information. We are given that S is 2 times the square root of 5, right? S is a leg, so R, the other leg, will also be 2 square roots of 5, but what we're interested in is T. I have a leg, so I am multiplying by the square root of 2, so 2 square roots of 5 times the square root of 2. Remember, we're going to multiply the rational parts, and that's all I have is 2, and the irrational. 5 times 2 gives me 10, and this cannot be reduced. So for number 2, you should have 2 times the square root of 10. In number 3, okay, so checking your work, hopefully you did well on these. Put my R back in here. For number 3, T is the square root of 2. So this time we know the hypotenuse and we're moving backwards to find the legs. So I have to divide by the square root of 2. Square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2, anything divided by itself is equal to 1. So if S is 1, then R is also equal to 1. So that's going to be the answer for number 3. In number 4, we know that T is equal to 10. Again, we know the hypotenuse and we want to work backwards to the legs, so we need to divide by the square root of 2. This is not reduced. We have to apply the identity property, which will give me 10 square roots of 2 over 2, which will reduce to 5 square roots of 2. So if S is 5 square roots of 2, R is also 5 square roots of 2, and that is the solution to number 4. So I hope that went very well for you. That's what the entire section is going to be of your homework when you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now, the second special triangle comes from an equilateral triangle. Now, I can't remember, that may be a new term to us. Equilateral means that all 3 sides are congruent in our triangle. All 3 sides are congruent, but it's also equiangular, which means that all 3 angles are congruent as well. So if I have 180 degrees in my triangle divided by 3 angles, each angle has to be 60 degrees. All right, but we're studying right triangles, so this is not very helpful. It's not a right triangle, but just like we did with the square, we divided it in half. We can do that here as well by drawing a straight line right down the middle. So we have split our 60-degree angle. We now have 30 degrees left here. We have drawn a perpendicular line, so here's our right triangle. So the second special triangle is 30, 60, 90. So just like our 45, 45, 90, we have some very specific rules. Now we can use the Pythagorean Theorem again to make it work out. I'm not going to take the time to do that since you've already seen how that works. But let's go back for a second. I erased this probably a little too soon. Because now we have all 3 sides congruent to themselves, we could label 1, 1, and 1 again like we did before. But we have a problem because we are actually dividing one of the sides. So if I divide it, I'm going to have a half on each side. And I'm not sure, but what some textbooks actually do that. I can't remember if yours does here or not. I don't think yours does, so we're good. But anyway, so let's make them 2, 2, and 2. So at the time that we split them, this part has a value of 1. This was 2, it hasn't changed, and now I have the other leg here. And so again, we could use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the value of it. Here we have C 2 squared minus 1 squared, because we're going from the hypotenuse to find the leg, is equal to, we'll give it an a squared. So 4 minus 1 is equal to 3 is equal to a squared. My apologies. All right, so 3 is equal to a squared, and taking the square root of both sides, we find that a is the square root of 3. Okay, so just like we did with our 45, 45, 90 triangle, we're now going to have a memorized pattern for our 30, 60, 90 triangles. Now it's very important. It's easy to get mixed up here because the sides are all different. The 30-degree angle is the smallest angle. We have 30, 60, 90 in order. So since the 30-degree angle is the smallest angle, if I follow straight across the triangle, this is going to be my shortest side. So that's why it's always going to get the value of 1. So when you're first setting up your triangle, it may be lying down, okay? It may be going like so. But once I find out which one is my 30 and which one is my 60, I'm going to come right across from the 30 and I'm always going to give it the 1, okay? Now, the hypotenuse always has a value of 2. So we see that the hypotenuse is double the short leg. The square root of 3 will always go across from the 60-degree angle. So get your calculator for just a minute and put 3 in and take the square root. And it's approximately, I'll put it up here, 1.73. It goes on and on. So you can see that 1 is the smallest number and it goes across from 30. 60 is I went the other way. Square root of 3 is the next largest number. It goes across from 60. And 2 is the largest number. It goes across from the 90. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. So we have 30 goes with 1, 60 goes with square root of 3, and 90 goes with 2. So that's the most important part, just like it was with the 45, 45, 90, it's just getting it set up right. Once we have that, the pattern's pretty much the same. The 30 is always going to be my main focus, all right? So we'll start there. What if my short leg is equal to 3? Starting with the short leg, we always double the length to get the hypotenuse. So 3 times 2 is 6. I'm going to come back to the short leg. We will never go across the triangle from 90 to 60. It doesn't work. I'm going to come back to the short leg, and to get from 1 to the square root of 3, I multiply. Okay, so this side would be 3 square roots of 3. So 1 doubled gives me 6, 3 doubled gives me 6, and 3 times the square root of 3 gives me 3 square roots of 3. If I have 4 down here, to get to my hypotenuse, I'm still going to double it. 4 times 2 gives me 8. Come back to the side opposite the 30, the short leg, and 4 times the square root of 3 gives me 4 square roots of 3. Okay, so as long as I know the short leg first, it's very simple. Takes a few extra steps if we're given other information. For instance, if I know my hypotenuse first, and let's say it's 10, now we're dividing to find the short leg, because the hypotenuse is double the short leg. So dividing by 2, I get 5. Now it's the same thing. Since I know the short leg, I'm still multiplying here. 5 square roots of 3. So you always have to be aware of which direction you're going. When you're coming from the short leg, we're going to multiply. If I'm coming from one of the other sides, I'm going to divide. Okay? So let's see what if we know that the long leg is 4. Again, I never jump across the triangle this way. So I've got to go to the short leg. I'm already sitting here with my square root of 3, so I'm going to have to divide that by that. 4 divided by the square root of 3, rationalize your denominator by applying the identity property. 4 square roots of 3 over 3. Now that's my short leg. we have to double it to get the hypotenuse. Now let's come over here. If I have 4 square roots of 3 over 3 and I want to multiply by 2, remember 2 is 2 over 1, and when I multiply straight across the numerator and straight across the denominator. So we're going to have 8 square roots of 3 over 3. That's reduced, so that will be my hypotenuse, 8 square roots of 3 over 3. Okay, so again, I'm going to have you stop and practice using the special right triangle worksheet, okay, working numbers 5 through 9. Now when you get to number 9, you're going to draw a square and think through it that way. But each one of these you need to think about which side you have. Do you have the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? Therefore, do you multiply or do you divide? So pause the video for a second and work those out, and then come back and I will work them for you. All right? So here we have, in the orientation we have 30 degrees here, we have 60 degrees here, and we have 90. This is P, this is Q, and this is N. In number 5, Q is 8. So the first thing we are given is the short leg. So that's the easy one. I'm going to multiply each direction. So we're doubling to get the hypotenuse. 8 times 2 is 16. We're going back to the short leg, and we're multiplying by the square root of 3. Okay, so P is equal to 8 square roots of 3, and N will be 16. Okay, make sure you got that correct. And then we'll go on to the next one. Number 6, we are given that N is 20. Okay, that's my hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is double the short leg, so we have to divide by 2. So Q is going to be 10. But now that I'm at my short leg, I can still multiply by the square root of 3 here. So 10 square roots of 3. So in number 6, when N is 20, Q is 10, and P is 10 square roots of 3. Check your work. For number 7, P is 4 square roots of 3. Now here we're given the long leg first, okay? So we always have to get back to the short leg. We're going to divide this time. So 4 square roots of 3 divided by the square root of 3 simply gives me 4. And then this is the easy one. 4 times 2 gives me 8. So for number 7, Q should be 4 and N should be 8. All right, and finally for this diagram, we are given for number 8 that P is 9. So if I have 9 here, this is the long leg. To get to the short leg, we have to divide by the square root of 3. This has to be rationalized. Use the identity property. And don't forget to reduce. So 3 square roots of 3 is going to be Q. And to double that, remember 3 square roots of 3, when I multiply by 2, I have to multiply my rational values, 6 square roots of 3. So your answer to number 8, Q is 3 square roots of 3, and N will be 6 times the square root of 3. The final problem, you need to draw your own square, and it says that the diagonal of a square is going to be 6. I want to find the perimeter of the square. So the first thing we realize is that we have created a 45, 45, 90 triangle with a hypotenuse of 6. So to get one of the sides, we're going to divide by what? 6 over the square root of 2. We've gone back to squares, so we're back up here. So we're dividing by the square root of 2. We're rationalizing the denominator. 6 square roots of 2 over 2 gives 3 square roots of 2. That means the length of every side is 3 square roots of 2, and I want perimeter. So there are 4 sides, so 4 times 3 square roots of 2 will give me 12 square roots of 2, and that should be your solution to number 9. Okay, so that ended up being like a video and a half. But I think that pretty much covers everything you need for 9-1. We'll come back in a little bit with a video for 9-2. Thank you.